Festivals, great occasions and great gatherings, full of colour and spectacle. The most revealing are those ancient festivals which celebrate the key moments of life: birth, marriage and death. These festivals are bursting with life and energy. Carnival processions, special meals, lively music and firework displays. In this film, we're celebrating love and marriage. In the high Atlas Mountains of North Africa, every year the Berber people of Morocco gather at harvest time to buy and sell and to lay in provisions for the winter. But above all, their festival is a time for getting married in front of all the people, and a time for young men and women and their families to spot a good marriage partner for the future. Let's join the celebration and go to the festival. The landscape of the high Atlas Mountains of Morocco in North Africa is harsh but impressive. This rugged terrain is home to tribes of the ancient Berber people, the original inhabitants of Morocco before the Arab conquest. In fact, they probably got their name from the medieval Arabic word for North Africans who weren't Arabic speakers. But the Berbers call themselves the Amazigh, or free people. Traditionally, they are nomadic, moving their animals around the high pastures and valleys. Divided into clans and tribes, they fiercely guard their independence, and many keep themselves separate by living in these mountainous areas. They speak their own languages with over 10 million speakers. In the Central Atlas region, close to 3 million speak a Berber language called Amazigh. But the lives of the Berbers are changing. These days, they live in villages of mud brick houses rather than in tents. There are mobile phones and satellite dishes, with trucks often replacing the old transport system of camels and donkeys. In September every year, the tribes of the Ait Hadidu Berbers gather to celebrate a famous marriage festival, or Musem. Near the town of Imilchil, vehicles and cranes are busily creating a festival site around a remote village which houses the blue-domed tomb of an Islamic saint, Sidi Muhammad el-Maghani. It's a holy place for couples to get married, but it's also the setting for a huge market. And over the coming days, a tent city will spring up, and as many as 30,000 Berbers will gather in this isolated location in the mountains for a festival that dates back 500 years. With only 3 days to go to the big wedding day, the festival site is still not ready. The large paved area at the center of events is still a bit of a building site. But the first traders are already arriving, all of them keen to get the best spots for displaying their wares. The man who has to keep it together and moving forward is festival organizer Mohamed Ujar. He knows where everything has to go.
هذاك مولين التوب كيجي من هنا، مولين الجوطية كيجي من هنا، مولين المواند كيجي من هنا، مولين القهوي كيمشي لهيه. هذاك كيمشي مولين الحدادة، مولين الحدادة ومولين الشحمة، مولين البيبان والشراجم وكلشي. وذاك اللي هي كيمشي مول الجمال، ذاك اللي هنا كيمشي مول البغايل والبقار والغنم. هذاك اللي هذا كيمشي اللي كيديروا العقد في هذه البلاصه. هذاك المنصه كيجي مول احيدوس والمسائل ديالهم كيديروا احيدوس والفوكرور وكلشي من هنا في هذا النهار ديال الموسم.
The Berbers of the remote High Atlas are sensitive about intrusion into their private and public traditions concerning marriage. There are many tourists who visit Imilchil for their Musem, but it is rare to have access to a bride and groom who are getting married at the festival. The groom's house is the scene of the busiest action, because the bride will join the groom's family home after the ceremonies, and there's a race on to get the house ready for her. The men of the family are all painting. There's the groom, Mohammed, who's 26, his brother, Abdullah, and his father, Zayed, who's happy with his boy's work. It's a big job, because they've built an extension to the main house to accommodate 2 couples. Abdullah is also getting married soon. Mohammed is very excited by the upcoming wedding, and he really hopes his bride will like the decoration. Mohammed has only met his bride-to-be twice. Once to talk for an hour, and a second time to make a contract. But he sees the marriage as very much his choice.
لا دغي شرنا يدي تختار يخفون انسان دغي شرنا دغيني تنيدي تنادن تدور عاد فين تربت الناس عجبن تدون الوالدين انسان دا سنتين ندوز افلان تا اميس من باب ساميس من مايس يضغر فلاني دغي دو تراتيت ات المساواليه اللي تقبل
هكا محمد يلا
It's hungry work doing all the decorating, and the family gathers for a welcome meal. Hand-washing rituals are an important feature of Berber life, because food is eaten with the right hand. At today's meal, one of the daughters, Hafida, is pouring the water over everyone's hands.
How we doing?
The family enjoys a traditional dish which is well known across the world and named after the distinctive conical cooking pot. It's a delicious potato-topped tagine, spiced with saffron. The family scoop up the food with the oven-baked bread. Mohammed's stepmother, Hanu, is looking forward to the arrival of the new bride.
هذه تعاون شتجعت هذه تعاون شتجعت هذه المجاشان زدمتشان تعزن شاط الطفشة هاي تيني غي يخفينو.
Hanu will not be going to the festival. Zayed and the children will go while she takes care of the house and farm. But she remembers her own wedding well and her feelings about it.
ايوا فرحة غيمقة وكذا غاك اجي ساعة كلها نداك امشي نايدي تجونا الناس الجمزي والنايول مش دا يورشا.
Zayed is Hanu's second husband. She divorced her first husband and is clear that it's not shameful to divorce in Islam. But she's glad that times have changed and that women now have greater freedom of choice than she had in her first marriage.
ايوا عروسة يعجب شوية مقا إما قيتلني ما قاجي أغرى غادي غزيري أو رخ لينا بيجي إيغال.
For Hanu, her marriage to Zayed has been much happier. But her story shows how marriages made in the traditional Berber way could go wrong. Back at the festival, there's a problem that needs to be sorted with the wedding tent, the place where all the marriages take place. The construction team have got the wrong poles, and there's a flurry of phone calls to fix it. More and more traders are unloading their amazing range of brightly coloured goods. Among them is a group of women who've set up a cooperative to achieve a degree of independence for themselves. Their leader is Fatima Momou.
نيت الجمعيه نرا نخدم كانوا يقراو من عرض المنتوج المهم نرا نفغني سيني سنلاو نكني يسور انت فما يدا غير عام مسكان نسويا نرا يسور نتدعم شويه كغور الجمعيه انا الا نيرز نور نخدم نرا نجي نسويا باش يسور نتدعم شويه يسور انت فما يدا غير عام.
The wedding tent is finally pulled up into place and made secure. And Mr. Ujar's team of workers are clearly relieved and delighted. After all, it will be the focal point of the wedding festival. And for all the problems that have to be solved and the busy deadlines, nothing stops Mr. Ujar smiling.
كنخدموا مع السلطة وصافي المهم كنخدموا مع السلطة اللي عجبتني.
The annual event of the Imilchil festival is underpinned by an ancient myth, which is both romantic and tragic. In the huge landscapes of this high Atlas region are two lakes, Lake Tizlit, which means bride in the Amazigh language, and Lake Izli, which means groom. There was always intense competition for grazing land between the Berbers, which led to conflict between tribes. And this is where the Romeo and Juliet story of lovers from different tribes comes in, and the myth of the two lakes. It's all explained by Lassen Oabo, who's a Berber official at the festival.
جماعة يرناد مياوال مع تيري العداوة تجار إبراهيم دايتي عزار قتلنا نشر دعيد نايت إبراهيم إلى تربت ولينا ولينا أدن نفشان يعيد وإبراهيم زدات أريال أتي مطون سايا وتي عزاد يخت عيد الزريت أرتال ليش داني مطون ساين.
Lassen is an educated Berber who is proud of the way his education has given him and his family new possibilities. His life's journey is summed up by a stone hut near Lake Izli. It's where his family used to live in summer when they took the sheep to the higher pastures.
ولكن يمكن لسوء الحظ لحسن الحظ انك صغيري بابين تقول بنون المدرسه تمازير تيميل شي نغر ولينا مقارن هي راه مقارنه انا قراها حتى ندو الصيف العوطه دونا غدا نيك الساولي بالتالي تساعدي يعني يزيد يزنزول لي خلاص نغد نغدي فيها نتيم مشينا نغد نتبع توري لي نمزر.
In the changing world of the Berbers, Lassen now wants to see the same opportunity extended to his own daughters.
نتمنى المستقبل زاهر هذا غير مليح باش هذا نتيجه المناصب هذا نتي المناصب المناصب القرار نيت باش هذا ديال الترفع في المنطقه عائليه بزاف الامور باش ندوز ذات.
Lassen's vision of the future is still a long way from the reality of daily life for most Berber women, including that of the bride in our story. Mohammed's bride is called Fatima, She's 23 years old, but she's lived a sheltered life in her village. She and her family have received gifts of clothing, sugar, and henna from Mohammed's family. It's all part of sealing the engagement. She's very shy and clearly nervous about the big change in her life which the wedding will bring. But Fatima will be going to a relatively prosperous home with Mohammed's family, and her father is confident that the marriage is the right thing. But Fatima's mother is very conscious of losing her daughter. She herself was an orphan and didn't have a loving home like Fatima. But she reluctantly accepts reality. It's not unusual for a bride or a groom to be nervous just before the life-changing event of a marriage. And Fatima contemplates her future as a married woman with some uncertainty. Fatima's groom, Mohammed, works on the family farm, which produces maize and other vegetable crops like potatoes. Agriculture is important for many Berbers who make a living by farming the mountain slopes, though they still graze their sheep and goat herds in the highlands during the summer months. Much of the farming is still done by manual labor. Crops are harvested by hand, and field size is generally quite small, and irrigation water is always available from nearby mountain streams. Mohammed's family farm needs to do well this year, because it's a big thing to afford a wedding and a wife, especially as Berber brides do not bring dowries from their families. There will be new clothes and carpets to buy for his bride's arrival. But he's confident she's worth it, and his hopes are high for a successful marriage.
أخا أديكم ربي الخير. هذا غيهضو ربي، هذا غيصنم ربي، هذا غادي يهضو ربي إنا غنثمطو، غادي يهضو ربي إنا سنناتفت. ما قرا سوري عجبتي. أنا نتمنيت.
Back at the festival site, Mr. Ujar is busy sorting out the right places for the different traders. A vegetable seller knows exactly where he wants to set up his stall. One of his most important products is for chewing to make the teeth an attractive yellow color. It's the opposite of glossy TV adverts for lovely white teeth. But all this romantic stuff cuts no ice with Mr. Ujar. He wants the vegetable seller to move, but the man likes this pitch and doesn't want to move. Mr. Ujar insists, and he has the backing of men in uniform. After all, this is an official matter in a festival that gets a lot of government attention. The trader isn't really happy about it at all, and stays as close as possible to his favorite spot. By the end of the day at the festival site, the market is starting to take shape. In a couple of days' time, the noise and bustle will be extraordinary. The next day dawns, and before all the buying and selling starts up, the morning prayer must be said. even in isolation up on the mountain slopes above the festival site. Out in the countryside at Mohammed's home, his father Zayed is at work early, cleaning the prize bull for sale at the market. It's really important for the financing of the wedding.
لازم تحلق غادي برا. شنو الفلوس؟ نزلي من هو. ها غندفع لك فوا وحاول أد نقضو. يا السفلي.
It will need a truck to get this magnificent bull to the festival market. Not every farming family has its own motorized transport. But when a truck arrives, it's all hands to the task of getting this large animal on board. The next few hours will be important for Mohammed.
ديك السوم صغير 150,000 ان شاء الله ماشي سخر مولانا 350 350.
The festival site has been transformed into a spectacular market, and there are specialist sections of various kinds. In the grain market, you can buy two types of grain, one for animals and one for bread making. It's a crucial purchase for the Berbers of the High Atlas. Those who live in the more remote areas will buy supplies here for a whole year. The donkey market is a place of sharp haggling over prices. In many ways, this sums up the mix of the ancient and modern in Berber life. Trucks are common, but the donkey is still an important means of transport. But it's the bull market that's the key destination for Mohammed. He's joined by Zayed and Abdullah for this vital piece of trading. They cast shrewd and experienced eyes over the prices and the ages of the bulls on sale. Then an Arab buyer sizes up Mohammed's bull and offers 15,000 Moroccan dirhams for it, about $1,800 US. It's not really enough for Mohammed, who needs to do better given all the expenses of the wedding he has to cover. The buyer is disappointed to be rejected, but Mohammed stands firm. There's a lot at stake here for so many people. Fatima Mamoul from the Women's Cooperative has traveled for 6 hours to get here, and it's cost her the equivalent of $125 US, which is a lot of money for her. So she needs to sell 800 loaves each day of the festival just to break even. So far today, she's only sold 100, but she has to make this work.
ما نخدمش تعرف ما زيرتنا بزاف لكن نيت سيخفين وتلاغوري المهنه غوري السطا غوري الخياطه غوري بزاف نيت فيه ولكن والو ما يتخدم تقيم دار تكرفاز تقيم دابا تعتمد تخف الوالدين كورينا عاد اللي خصها تخدم تخفني ديون والي لا المشكل لاغوري بضل الوالدين ويخسر يعتمد خفيخفين بضل بانو دمو ويخسر يعتمد خفيخفين وتخدم نيت خفيخفين كما يدير انا دياسي كان واس عجبني تخدم انت تمني ريزنوها شكون كون يدي تضران كون كنا يجي تضرن بزاف يريزني الناس بقات تسافر وين ناغنس كنا هو ولا ما نخدم نرا كنا نسير كاش ميزار غير انت فما غير عام مسكين نخدموا كيش مازيرت نغادر نتفقر برا لا تغرق شي راسي نضيع انت غير انت خصنا تخدم البنيت الحماس يدي كيما خصنا نشجع حتى مازيرت نغادر كنا دنين بعيد خدمت شي راسي نغادر نتفق نتغير برا.
There's a lot of pressure on Fatima. Her parents are divorced and she feels very alone. Even this strong young woman is looking for personal happiness at the festival.
لا غدا ولا مش كان بلا منيتي كان مناسب راه كذا ولا صراحه خير كان من ماشي مشكل غير هذه حلوه هذيك كان من المحلانه.
There are so many stories of divorce in this society. Perhaps there's a possibility that greater freedom of marriage choice for individuals will produce stronger marriages. But divorce rates are also high in Western societies where individual choice is the norm. It's the day before the wedding ceremony, and there's been a sudden injection of uncertainty into the preparations. All 38 couples who are to be married tomorrow have been summoned to appear before a judge at the courthouse in Imilchil. It seems to be a totally unexpected turn of events. Fatima has arrived and goes inside, but Mohammed arrives later. There's a lot of coming and going this morning. Events inside the court are given an official explanation by Lassan.
Dedans, il arrive le juge ce matin pour vérifier les dossiers des candidats qui vont se marier demain, mais demain l'acte avec l'autorisation de mariage.
A lot of bureaucratic care is being taken because this is a sensitive matter in Morocco. The Mudawana reforms of 2004 have had a major impact on women's rights. Under this legal code, women cannot be married against their will. There are careful restrictions on having more than one wife, and the legal age for marriage has been raised to 18. When Mohammed comes out of the courthouse, he talks to Lassan about what happened.
لا الدوسي ولكن في زيت باش هذا الدوسي بخير.
The cafes of Imilchil are good places to recover from the rush, but they're also places for serious business. And it's here that the contrasting attitudes and hopes of different young people can be clearly seen and heard. Mehdi Chabou is having coffee with a couple of friends. Mehdi is an English student in university. He likes life in the Imilchil area where his family keeps a hotel, but he's looking for change through education.
حاجتي من هو أدي غرب من المدي عمر يخفنس لأن داكي تنيون مكثرات فكرت ساسكا يخصت زرعة الروز ميدا تفكرت ساس قوسين خديت أنا يخصت زرعة الروز دا تفكرت ين وانا ين 7 سنين يخصت زرعة يسكولا دا تفكرت ميات عام غدونا يخصت زرعة الوعي.
In many ways, Mehdi is typical of young educated people whose attitudes are modernizing and becoming more international.
بالنسبة لي أنا كاين وراي كفا بزاف ماشي تملاقي تمطوتني تربات وانا يو تا الساعة ناخد شحال تعود ستا والله تين تريس كدينا تين تنضاد نيت زيد عي مرة دينا غيزلعوك ويخفني كذا ما يمكنش.
In a big contrast with Mehdi's story, Lassan is helping a young man called Ali who wants to marry his 15-year-old girlfriend. A judge can use his discretion on this matter down to the age of 15, but the paperwork has to be right. It's become contentious behavior in the light of the Mudawana code.
Le problème, c'est que la fille, elle n'est pas adulte, ou bien elle n'est pas âgée plus de 18 ans. la mudawwana ou bien le statut qui organise cette activité ne donne pas l'ordre ou bien de passer, de rédiger l'acte. Alors le dossier est compliqué grâce à son âge.
As Ali's girlfriend is under the legal age, her father's permission will be needed for the marriage to go ahead at the festival. For all Lassen's useful help, Ali will have to wait to find out if he'll be allowed to marry the next day. It's a nervous time. The surprise summons to the court in Imilchil has brought together Mohammed and Fatima and her father, who drink tea while they wait for progress from the judge and the authorities. Being in mixed company in a cafe is clearly unfamiliar territory for Fatima. But Mohammed is happy with the surprise encounter.
يعجبني الحال يعجبني الحال يتغدى مجموعة جديدة تخنيت.
Today is Friday, and even in the crowded market area, it's imperative to stop for the Jumu'ah, or Islamic congregational prayers that take place on this day in mosques all over the world. The local mosque is so full that there's an overspill of worshippers onto makeshift prayer mats outside. The sounds of the market animals almost drown the imam's voice leading the prayers. But nothing distracts the worshippers. This festival is full of contrasts and surprises, the old and the new, the religious and the very earthy. Mehdi is exploring the market, and even this very modern young Berber is drawn to a stall selling porcupine quills, which are being offered for their aphrodisiac power. The salesman is confident they'll do the trick, but he also offers the magical power of mercury, which is traditionally used in everything related to love, including the quicksilver reactions of men and women who seek a partner. There's a great deal of excitement and flirtation in the air, and you pick it up even though some young women have their faces veiled and are keeping to the cultural and religious traditions of modesty. Gone are the days when you found a partner and got married all in one go at the festival. But although the serious exploration of marriage possibilities is now done through family connections back in the villages, this is still a good chance to weigh up the attractions of possible partners. One young man can scarcely contain himself. He's so full of expectation.
نتمنى هذا والغدا او وقت ما زرتنا اترسخ تجر شويه ارتيد عقليه يوت ان شاء الله شي شراسي ملشن عجب نسي مزيان سواء نسنت سلاطين نسنت حرامين نسنت دحرين نسنت لهم نسنت دا يسترقي كنت أكو توش من نملشن نخدم مزيان أو تنغ أحرانت وأنا ندغيك يا غنز بتنت دا السن دغيك أركمنت الله ما هذا ما نكور تنانت ما زرتنا دغيك وأنا تدغي سندس العقلية دغي أحران.
But it's important not to get too carried away by all the erotic energy and romantic charm of the festival. There's a lot of intensely practical trading to do. Weaving carpets and clothing is daily work for Berber women, and this is the place to update your equipment. And there's brisk trade at the hardware stall, where you can pick up metal objects for the house and the farm.
نزلت بزاف تفروين اللي عارف
نزينات ديال فرنوط. المهم كلشي داينز زاج جوج جدود. المهم البراوض تيفروين البيبان كلشي داينز. الباريزات اي تعبدي دات الجانتي مغريو دات تيري الباريزات. المهم كلشي داينز. المهم جوج جدود.
The rain comes on in the afternoon, though the forecast is good for the wedding's next day. This annual event looks to the eye of an outsider like a mixture of agricultural show and rock festival, and it needs the same sort of stamina and endurance. But the 38 couples who are getting married need to have some rest before the formal ceremony tomorrow. The big day has arrived. The festival site has started to stir into action. The ceremonial area next to the saint's tomb is still fairly quiet, but traders are getting ready for one of the biggest shopping days in the year. The marriage traditions of the High Atlas are very distinctive, but there's something about a wedding day that feels familiar across the world. In the bridal home, the family is having a simple breakfast before the journey to the wedding ceremony. You have to build yourself up for a wedding day. Fatima joins them a bit on the late side. She looks fairly relaxed at this early stage of the day. Then her mother fetches the special bridal costume. It's known as a handira and is a specially woven wedding blanket which is worn as a cape on the marriage day, a symbol of the new life she'll be entering at the groom's family home. Handiras are often white with sequin decoration, but others, like Fatima's, are coloured and patterned in the style of the tribe. This one, striped in black, white, and the red that symbolises peace and an open heart, is typical of the It-Ejar sub-tribe, to which Fatima's family belongs. And now, father and daughter set off for the wedding festival in a waiting car. They leave behind the quiet of the morning village and make their way on the dusty roads to join the thousands descending on the festival site. Unlike a wedding in the West, where it's all about the individual bride and groom, this will be a collective event with a focus on legal formalities. The family celebrations will come at a later date. As Fatima walks through the crowded festival site, she passes a number of other brides in a variety of costumes. These days, perhaps only half of Berber weddings in the High Atlas take place at the festival. But the occasion is still hugely important for the marriage-making process across the whole society. There's always a lot of waiting around on a day like this. Mohammed is readying himself for the wedding and has the men of his family to support him. Over at the wedding tent, Berber officials like Lassen wear traditional costume for the ceremony. And he relishes the ancient traditions of the Musem, even if he also takes a practical approach.
Le traditionnel, c'est que ça blanche, et la djellaba blanche aussi. Et il me manque seulement les chaussures qui sont blanches, comme les mariés. J'ai oublié mes babouches grâce à parce que j'ai peur de tomber la pluie et ça mouille.
The officials of the Moroccan government are present in modern suits. Their involvement is an important sign of the state's interest in this key annual event in Berber society. Historically, it's been an important part of the census process for a state that wanted to have better information about the Berber tribes. The Berbers have achieved much stronger cultural and language rights in recent times, but the Moroccan government still controls all aspects of public life carefully. There's always plenty of media interest in the ceremonial events, with international and local crews trying to get the best vantage points to capture its unique character. The ceremony begins with an invocation for the blessing of Allah, intoned by the Imam. Strikingly for the outside observer, there's no particular atmosphere of romance in the wedding tent. This event of multiple marriages is all about making matters legal. Mohammed and Fatima move through the process in line. The paperwork is checked to prove that they are free to marry and that all is correct under the marriage laws. Then they pick up an envelope with a gift from the state of 1,000 dirhams, which is about 125 US dollars. And among the couples, there's Ali, who's been successful in getting permission to marry his 15-year-old girlfriend. As always at weddings, there's a sort of release of energy and celebration after the formal proceedings. The main spectacle of the Musem now starts to unfold in the area next to the saint's tomb. At the heart of the gathering are the Ahidus dancers and musicians, whose percussion, singing and movement lead the communal festivities at key times of the year, especially harvest. The sharing out of a gigantic loaf is a symbol of the bounty of the harvest and of the unity between the families of bride and groom. For the couples who've married, the day continues with refreshments at the government building. But out in the tent city, the market trading is in full swing. Fatima Mamou is hard at work selling the cooperative's bread, and she's beautifully dressed for this special day. It would be no surprise if she caught the eye of one of the men at the festival. Who knows if a new phase of her life will start at this year's Musem. Mr. Ujar is keeping an eye on the market stalls to make sure there's no disturbance of the layout and that everything's going smoothly. But there's a proud family moment about to happen which is much closer to his heart. One of the key rituals on the wedding day is the procession which shows a traditional bride riding a white mule, accompanied by a goat symbolizing wealth and a child representing fertility. She's on her way to the bridegroom's house, and the mock fighting with palm branches is a ritual testing of the groom to see if he has the necessary patience to be a good husband. This year, the young boy is Mr. Ujar's son, Khalid. After he gets down from the mule, He's warmly greeted by his father, who's proud and delighted that the boy's been at the center of events. Fatima and Mohammed now have a new status as they go on a first shopping trip together around the market. It's a moment of first companionship, and they look relaxed with each other as Fatima searches for some new clothes. There's also a chance for a welcome glass of juice on a tiring day. The old traditions of finding a partner and getting married at the great gathering of the festival are still strong. But like in all other aspects of Berber life, the ways of the people are clearly changing. A pride in Berber identity is the common ground. But some embrace modernization and education in a way that will change how men and women relate to each other, in a marriage, and in new opportunities for women at work.
انت فرض نتلاقى فرض الوجود نسنتا كور عادة كانت لنا رانت خرانتي خوان سنتي تاعنا اي بدلت لحقاش العائله يقول لا يتسافر يقول لا يتيني يقول لا يتسمديني يقول لا التلفازه يقول الا بريد يقول لا التواصل يقول لا الاشعاع الثقافي يقول بزاف الامور يقول مزيان يقول يبداو كيتخناو لنا غاس سلا الفرصه باش هذا كيبدلوا يعني الناس
لا دغيا ورتاري غاتيا ولا دغيا لان الناس ولا غدا قراغس ولا غاتشمل اختغوري ربما ديك اختغوري درار بعدا داي وظف بعدا راه غير مغارين وبعدا شويه زيوالنا عادينا يمكن نفكر غير يولنا يول.
The festival continues as darkness gathers over the high Atlas Mountains. But Mohammed and Fatima are waiting for their transport to take them back to their homes. Their big domestic celebration lies ahead, when the bride finally travels to the groom's house for their life together. But the journey has started. Let's hope they find happiness together.